What is going on, Amazon sellers? Welcome back to the weekly Amazon Q&A show, where we share some e-commerce news, some stats, the occasional business maxim, and we, of course, answer your questions about selling on Amazon. So if you've got a question about retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, or perhaps you're just struggling with a curious Keepa chart, drop it in the chat, and we'll do our job, and we will help you out any way we can. Now, for those of you who might be new here, my name is Chris Grant, and to my right is my complacential co-host, Chris Rasick. Chris, how is Sunday treating you, sir?
Sunday is, Sunday's all right. Little basketball Sunday. This is, I love this time of year. Even though it's more difficult to follow college basketball, in my opinion,
Yes.
just with so many one and dones, you don't really get to become familiar with the players quite as much, or like it used to be. But the tournament has its own appeal. It's been a fun one. It's lived up to the hype. Although maybe something's there as far as like the favorites winning. They've got an incredible record, but it's fun to watch regardless. And this is happy to have our first show of the spring. That's all these things tie together, right? You get a little March Madness, you get the weather breaking, you get the time change. That means golf season is right around the corner. You start calling, you start checking the courses, the aggressive ones that will open up on any nice day. It's time to pull some muscles in your back from swinging too hard after taking the winter off. Although you don't really have that problem anymore. But I love this time of year. Baseball's right around the corner.
It gets into the 40s here, and the course, my son's school is literally right on one of my favorite courses. You pull into his school, and on a good morning, you will see the older fellas who decide to take the 7:00 tee time. It's right on, I believe, hole number 8, where we turn into his school. And on the mornings where you can faintly see your breath, there's not a soul on the course.
Oh, yeah. Yes, all the soft old guys down there. Oh.
Exactly. I will say, though, one of my favorite things about there being a course right there by his school is, I get to see guys, out playing in the morning, and I wonder, man, why don't I just drop my son off and then, go swing some clubs for a little while? But one of my absolute favorite things is actually seeing the guys hide their faces when they knock a golf ball out into the middle of traffic, of school drop-off traffic. And the sheer embarrassment that happens. And then every now and again, you got the guy who absolutely will not lose a ball and then also goes out into traffic, hiding his shame, and grabs the ball.
You're right. Like, we have those signs, you're not supposed to get out of your car, but then, some old dude in knickers comes, searching under the cars for his golf ball. You guys just have prime real estate all over the place. That seems like prime real estate. Why is there a school on the golf course?
Great question. It is a public course. I'm not, you know me well enough to know that I'm not a fancy fella. So it doesn't take a whole lot for me, but it is a public course. It's been around since I think the 60s. But Florida everything is a swamp. So if it's not on the beach, I don't know if you can say that anything is particularly prime real estate, but it's not too bad. Like, you can't throw a rock without hitting a body of water. So it's not like saying, oh, it's lakefront property is really a selling point. So I don't know. It's also one of the reasons why it made getting used to driving in Florida rather difficult for me. In the city of Columbus, got a nice grid pattern. and you've got an outer belt. So like if I lose my way, I just need to turn right until I'm going north. And in Florida, I have never seen a straight road. Oh, wow.
Right.
Like it's got to snake around 37 bodies of water to get from here to Publix. So
Right. And even when
I
the map shows there are streets, you plug it in and it takes you like is that highway closed? Like what what is the issue there?
exactly. Now I do want to before we get started, I want to second what you had to say. This really is such a great time of year. Like I know you love baseball, so baseball's back out. We go right from March Madness directly into Masters season. You know, it is such a good time. I really do love this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the uh for the northerners, the people who have to deal with snow, the people get legitimate cold, not like this guy. The seasonal depression lifts. You can almost feel it peeling off your body like one of those fancy scrubs that my daughters and my wife have laying all over the house. Yeah, it's good. Which doesn't match the vibe from OAC. I got a little fired up today. I know we got some heavy news pieces coming,
Mhm.
but the call was coming from inside the house today, Chris.
It was. It was. And I get it. I know that people get frustrated sometimes and it feels like it's always getting harder, but I mean that's business. Like what business hasn't gotten harder? I think I keep thinking back to like getting my insurance license again and opening up another insurance agency because what I like about insurance is actually one of the things I like about Amazon is the fact that I don't believe that there's a ceiling. Um, and it's just how hard you want to work and things like that. And also, like you can Amazon not so much, but in insurance you can build this recurring revenue stream as long as people re-up their contracts. But I was thinking about it the other day and I'm seeing all of the bros start moving into the insurance space. And all of these boiler rooms and talking about how insurance sales is the best thing ever and all of that. um, so I mean that's going to make it harder and laws have gotten stricter. It's home insurance in the state of Florida, for example, is ridiculously expensive, which makes a lot of people go without it and it makes selling it harder. Like I said, laws have gotten tighter. I used to cold call literally out of the white pages. I would just pick up the phone book and I would start calling, and you can't really do that anymore. First of all, I don't know if they make white pages anymore. I also there can't be that many people with home phone lines, and it's against the law to like cold call cell phones, I think. So, like, things have legitimately gotten harder. Same for Amazon. But like you made a good point. I think I came in with some good points. Like Amazon needs what we do. They just can't. Like, the private label brands are not going to recreate that discontinued laundry detergent. Wholesale sellers cannot buy 6 months of inventory at a time when they need to be on something that only sells 5 units a month and kill their cash flow. Uh, and like it just doesn't work. So the arbitrage seller, the person who can go out and buy 5 units and take care of that buyer who found something that went viral on TikTok that rarely sells, like that's what we're there for. We're there to fill in the spots in between. Plus, Amazon makes so much daggone money off of us. It's not funny.
Yeah, yeah, and to anybody that isn't, if you haven't caught the drift by now, in the OAC Plus community, we had a bit of a discussion going on. There was some, frustration, a little bit of emotion, um, or just a negative observation. I shouldn't speak for the person that posted it, but it kind of evolved into is Amazon going fully brand direct? Like is arbitrage dying? Are they trying to eliminate that? Um, and the arguments on the side of it's not going anywhere are just so strong, legitimately, in my opinion. We didn't even get into the fact that the percentage of sales on Amazon from third-party sellers continues to increase year after year after year. It's into the low 60% now. Yeah, Amazon has no interest in buying the inventory themselves when they can just charge a fee to be the steward of it for our behalf. But but that's what we're talking about. If anybody needs getting caught up, it's something that we're both pretty passionate about. And the evidence, I don't know. I thoroughly disagree every time it comes up. Like I said, I think it's frustration, and here's the thing that almost flies in the face of the momentum that we're seeing with Ungating, right? Just over this weekend, in the community, there were multiple posts talking about one person, it might have been a newer seller or something, got an auto ungate and wasn't sure what that was. Like we had to explain, it's like, no, that's, you got auto approved to sell that brand. So it feels like things are coming back. Our predictions late December, when people would ask the question of what's going on with all the gatings, our predictions of what would happen in Q1 seem to be finally coming to fruition.
Yeah. We may not be good on the timing, but I think we're good directionally a lot of times. Yeah. I posted that GIF, or GIF, whatever you want to call it. It's GIF, by the way. But I posted that, we're so back. And I'm kind of seeing that. And sure, there's a little bit of bias here. I will be the first to admit that. But friend of the show, friend of OAC Plus, Zach Altmaier is like 12 for 12 in getting ungated for brands that he's really wanted. We're seeing some more auto ungates. Like, things are good, and we're also at the same time we're seeing Amazon heal. And what I mean by that is it's no secret that Chris and I run a lead list, a quarterly lead list, which is open. If you guys want to join for Q2, we have shared, by the end of this week, we'll be up to $90,000 in potential profit shared over the first quarter for less than $1,000 investment. The asymmetric bet that you put in our lead list, and I know that I'm saying a lot here, but the asymmetric bet that you put in our lead list is so far in your favor, it's not funny. But anyway, yeah, we look at so many different listings every day, and I am seeing numbers that are going up, buy box price wise, on so many listings that, like, I'm like, man, this is something that I think I would sell, but I'm not sure it's had enough history of the price going back up that I should share it yet. And I sort of kick myself every single time I see that. I'm like, I really should have shared that, because the numbers are just looking good in our direction.
Yeah, and taking the theory, like, sure, this is anecdotal, but if ungating loosens back up and auto ungates come at a more natural pace of what we're used to outside of this past Q4 and half of Q1 or Q5, we should call it, maybe. If that goes back to the way it was, and then couple that with the marketplace pulse information and the general information about the number of sellers coming onto the platform, which basically the Cliff Notes version is competition is dwindling, right? It's getting less competition. Buy box prices go back up. You get a bunch of new brands again. I mean, this is how, everybody's saying that it's still an opportunity, which thankfully we're talking to a couple people in interviews, and we're not the only ones with that opinion.
Yeah. And if you're down on regular arbitrage, on April the 2nd, we have got a sick training coming to OAC Plus. And I'm not trying to make this an infomercial. But we did that podcast with Elizabeth Thompson, which actually hit number 1 out of our last 10 uploads. And in my opinion, we've had like a good run of really good episodes. And it's not over. We've got a good episode that's coming out this week. We've got a great guest coming on tomorrow. So like the run is not over either. But she hit number 1 out of the last 10 uploads, which I think she deserves. That was great information. But she's coming in. She's going to teach us her methods into OAC Plus. It's going to be a really good training in there.
Yeah, you mentioned Zach. Did you get a chance to look at his Bolo database?
I've got that email queued up and highlighted and marked for me to do it. And tonight, while I'm getting ready for tomorrow's podcast, I shouldn't say that. It only takes minutes to prepare for a podcast episode. I don't do homework the night before. But I do have that queued up to look at tonight. I'm hearing great things from everybody.
Yeah, it's impressive. I don't know if he has any spots left, but you guys probably know Zach Altmaier and his Bolo Insider. He unveiled his database of all these incredible ROI discontinued leads. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I was pretty happy with it when I got a chance to look around.
Yeah. So if you like discontinued products specifically, you want to go and sell bounce dryer bars and things like that, or whatever today's version of that is, check out boloinsider.com. It is worth it's worth the money. I promise. He honestly prices it way too low. He deserves to make more money on that. All right, let's see if we've got any quick questions we can answer, and then we've got a little news. Actually got some really interesting news, in my opinion, tonight. Sorry, guys, you're going to see me looking off at Claude a couple of times because I got to make sure it's doing its work. Let's see. Quail House, glad to have you here. Mad Moo Dog. Yeah, let's chat about that. I'd love to get your thoughts on state of insurance and whatnot. Okay, speaking of gating, can you use one invoice to ungate 2 different brands? I haven't asked. I haven't seen this asked in a long time. Historically, the answer is yes. I'd like to think that hasn't changed. You buy say you buy like a Disney Funko. Could you get it to work for both Disney and Funko? I would like to say yes.
Yeah, what was it back in the day? Entertainment Earth had what was it? It was a Star Wars
Lego
keychain that or
it was Marvel Disney Lego keychain that gets you 3 brands.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I won't reveal this, but even some glitch ungating is coming back. That's interesting to know. What sites are best for ungating products? In my opinion, I'm not sure that there is the best site. Like Amazon tends to accept nationally known retailers for ungating products. That's about as good as you can get. Oh, thank you, Polly. I appreciate you. So for a total newbie seller on Amazon, what is the best way to find already ungated items? I've only found 2 items after searching through endless retail stores, scanning using Seller Amp. So, all right, here's what I would do if I were a brand new seller. In the show notes, there's an affiliate link. So if you decide to keep it, I'll end up getting a very small cut at no cost to you. But there is a link to Box'em. Inside of Boxum, there is an ungating feature where you can take ASINs from Keepa, whatever, and you can run them through and you find out what you're ungated in. Should auto ungate some for you if you're eligible, but if you're in the sandbox, it's probably not going to happen very much. I ran through like 100,000 ASINs and came up with like 30 or 35,000 that I was eligible to sell. And then you go make a list of those brands. You should be able to come up with 1,000 brands if you do the work, and you should be fine. And then go look for those brands and make them profitable. Manufacture your margins using all the ways that we've talked about in our podcast episodes, and you should find some profitable products. And what Polly says, it takes reps and reps and reps. That is absolutely the truth. If you think 100 is enough, 10x it, because then you're just getting started. Heather scanned a bunch of perfume yesterday, got auto ungated in several brands. However, some of them showed red restricted when I checked profitability. Do you know why? There are going to be some brands that are just red restricted. I still have some, even though my account is older than Moses. It just happens, especially. So one of the things that I find in perfumes specifically is if they're higher end brands, those red restrictions will be more frequent. I'm not going to be able to sell a Tom Ford, for example. I know some people can. I'd love to know how they got, the ability, but it just happens.
Yeah, they don't. It's not quite as pronounced, but it's almost like the remnants of premium beauty are still there. There used to be a real prominent premium beauty category, and that was basically almost across the board off limits to the vast majority of sellers.
Yeah. I've seen the videos showing the Boxum thing, but where do you find the giant list of ASIN? Sorry, nope. So no such thing as a dumb question. That doesn't happen here. So what you have to do is you need to learn how to use Keepa. You go into Keepa Product Finder, and that's where you grab some ASINs. I'm 99% sure that I probably have a video on it somewhere, or I've got a Twitter thread on how to grab them. I know that I also have a 10,000 word article on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called an X article, but I wrote a 10,000 word X article on how to use Keepa as well. One of those things will show you how to do it. But you grab a list of ASINs from there, or download them from storefronts that you come across and run those ASINs through Boxum. That is how that's how to get them. A lot of different ways. All right. And if you folks have questions, don't hesitate to keep asking, but we do have some news, and we've got something at the end that I think is really, really good. But the National Retail Federation just released their 2026 forecast, and it's the most optimistic prediction out there right now. They're projecting retail sales will grow 4.4% year over year to $5.6 trillion. For context, the 10-year average is 3.6%. Last year came in at 3.7%. So NRF, National Retail Federation, is calling for a meaningfully above average year. And it's not just the NRF being cheerful. They built this forecast in partnership with Oxford Economics. And they do have some specific drivers that are carrying this number. The first driver is tax cuts. The Working Family Tax Cuts Act is expected to boost consumer spending, especially in the first half of the year. We talked about refunds or tax refunds either last week or the week before, and the data was showing refunds up about 10%, with about 85% of households getting some kind of cut. National Retail Federation expects that fiscal boost to translate into actual retail spending. The second driver they believe, is going to be easing inflation on the back half of the year. Now, of course, in the moment, it feels like we're not seeing ease of inflation. Okay. And I get that. Gas prices are up like $1 a gallon. So I know that everyone's kind of feeling a little pressure at the moment. However, if you look at trueflation, inflation is, while it has gone up, it is actually below uh, kind of the benchmark. Benchmark is right around the 2% mark, and trueflation shows inflation running at about 1.6% right now, which actually means that inflation is in a pretty good spot if you believe those numbers. Okay. NRF expects inflation to remain above the Fed's target through mid year, but they expect it to cool off by the third quarter. And what's most important about this is they're saying goods inflation specifically should stay in a lower band than overall inflation. That means a significant portion of that 4.4% growth that they're forecasting is real growth, not just prices going up that make the numbers look bigger. That distinction matters because real growth means more units moving, which of course means more opportunity for us as sellers. Now, there is a little bit more nuance to this. The NRF was very clear that the spending won't be spread evenly across income groups. We've talked about the K-shaped economy already. Higher income consumers are going to drive the bulk of this growth. The consumer bifurcation we've been talking about on this show all year is still in full effect. Higher income households are spending. Lower and middle income households are being more cautious, trading down and trying to stretch those dollars. Now, for us as sellers, this means two things. Number one, premium and branded products still have a customer base that's willing to pay. That's not going to go away. And here's a little hint: it never goes away, not even during depressions. Okay. Two value-oriented products in the mid-tier range are going to continue performing well because that's where the price-conscious consumer is living right now. So you don't necessarily have to pick one lane, but you do need to understand which customer you're serving with each product that you source, and it kind of changes how you want to source. You're probably going to want to drive your cost of goods down for mid-tier products as much as you possibly can. That's not really new, though. Okay, that's what we do every day. Now, there is one wild card in this forecast that the National Retail Federation has acknowledged, and they said they did not factor this in, and that is, of course, the war in Iran at the moment. NRF's chief economist said there's too much uncertainty there to model the impact on retail sales, but they will reissue a forecast if the situation changes, and they can put that into their model. The University of Michigan, which who believes this one, has consumer sentiment survey already showed a 2% drop to the lowest reading of the year, with the report noting that initial gains in February reversed after the conflict began. So sentiment is down a little bit, at least according to that school up north. But NRF is quick to point out that sentiment has been historically disconnected from actual spending patterns. Look at all of last year. Consumer sentiment was down in the dumps, and we saw 3.7% growth in retail spending. People say they feel bad about the economy, and then they just keep buying anyway because it makes us feel better. That pattern held through most of 2025, and NRF is betting it holds through 2026. So here's the biggest takeaway, if that was way too many words for you. The macro environment is supportive for retail in 2026. Tax cuts, seemingly easing inflation in the back half, and a resilient consumer spending all point to a solid year. Now, the growth, of course, is going to be uneven. There is some geopolitical risk that could change this picture a little bit. But as long as we stay diversified and do our best to keep inventory moving, and we don't over leverage ourselves on the assumption that every category is going to see the same lift, then we should all be fine. Like there is going to be more opportunity this year than there was last year. And it's going to reward the sellers who are paying attention to this and taking advantage of this.
Yeah, in recent history, retail therapy remains undefeated. That's, it's funny. I don't know if I'm at the point where I talk about this more than you do, since it's your grandfather. But I throw your grandfather's advice. We usually use it in a different context. You don't sell out of your own pocket is the piece of advice that I'm referencing, and usually it has to do with individual ASINs. And it's a conversation that we have when somebody says, well, who's paying who would pay this much money for this product? And it has to do, it kind of folds in the curse of knowledge, like the average consumer doesn't know, they don't have the same skills that you do in finding deals. Like that's the fact. Like the training that we go through, it changes us. I don't know if we can ever go back to the average consumer anymore. We know too much about deals, too much about discounts, too much about sales cycles, all that stuff. It's ruined us for the general population, from a consumer standpoint. But you bring it up with variations, and you look at it and it's like, well, these other two variations are selling for $20. Who's going to buy this shade at $35? It doesn't matter. That's a wasted exercise. The data is going to tell you whether it sells or not. It doesn't matter who those people are. That's something we have to remove from our consumer brains as we become Amazon sellers. Same things here. That applies on a macro level as well. It's you can hear a lot of stories and people, everybody's got a family member that no matter what the greater economy is doing, it's always there's always a recession going on and things are always tough, and like just it's not worth getting into the conversation. It's, well, have you tried not drinking 12 Busch Lights every single day, Uncle Joey? But I digress. But you know what I mean? Like you made a great point. Like how many shows did we have over and over again where every article that we referenced had that throw in line that mentioned the fear of tariffs, but yet, like you said, overall we were up 3.7%. So it's the same thing there. It's, don't worry about the headlines, don't worry about the social media posts talking about how tough things are. What does the data say? And as long as we can just stay in stock on what we sell, until we're proven wrong, this has been an incredible run for the retail consumer and the numbers that flow from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. We got to remember that if it bleeds, it leads. That is, it's what get clicks. We like fear. We want to run from it. We want to run from the things that, are a danger to us. And so, of course, we read about those things so that we can try to run away from them. But I saw a post today and I was like, man, if this isn't like exactly what we see all the time. There's someone that I follow on social media and they're always complaining about the state of the economy and how bad things are. And then I saw that they went and saw a movie at the movie theater. I don't know about you. I don't know the last time that you went to the movie theater, but I took my son to a movie, or no, I took my wife to a movie for Valentine's Day. That's the last time I went to a movie. You're talking $30 to get in the door. You're talking $45 for 2 drinks and 2 popcorns. It $100 to go see a movie for 2 people. And if you take your whole family, well, it's a car payment. And they went. So like things don't add up there. Like either you're in a real rough spot, or are you using Klarna to buy movie tickets? I'm not really sure, but we're seeing this over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's it's almost like it's a mentality thing. I read somewhere that basically, complaining about like the economy, I think it was in a different context, but we'll use it for the economy, like saying things are bad over and over again. It's basically a way to release accountability on yourself. I mean, that's the one thing. I've got I saw some things on Twitter myself that I'd love to go off on, but the one thing that the hustle bros get right is they just don't have any fear. They're all about just going out and making enough money to create the lifestyle that you want to. And I try to only pick out those good things in between all the other stupid stuff that they say sometimes. But that part, and we've talked about it with some of the young guns that we've in this string of podcasts. We've had some younger guys that just decided to do things, and they are doing it to a massive scale. And that's something that the woe's me, this economy, and times are tough. All those people, that's probably something that they should take from these young kids. I feel bad calling them kids, but nah, I'm old enough to say it.
Yeah. I don't necessarily want this to turn into a soapbox session, but if we look back, even if the news was right that the economy is bad and things are not looking good and stuff like that, I'm actually okay with that. Historically, recessions and even depressions are where some of the best businesses have been born. And there is always an opportunity for the people who are willing to take extreme ownership and figure it out and do realize that, you can just do things. I don't know. There's so many lessons. I know that a lot of them seem trite and cliche, but they're trite and cliche for a reason. And I think that maybe we need to do a better job of not only brainwashing ourselves, but also brainwashing those who take the time to watch what we put out.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. It's basically the thing that I like about it. The reason that it's not just superficial language. It is because it boils down to the abundance mentality versus limiting beliefs. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a real thing. So there's kind of like fundamentals at play here, even though it's two opposing generations. But the one thing about it, if you read any personal development books, self-help, anything like that, the one thing you notice is that it doesn't make any exceptions for the state of the economy, right? Like people, a book that wants to train you on the abundance mentality, there isn't a caveat. There's no asterisk saying, well, as long as GDP growth is above this number, this will work. They don't write it like that.
Exactly. Shannon. Yeah. No low inventory level fees because of what you sell. Yeah, that's huge. Absolutely huge for you. Okay, you know what? There's a lady, and we need to get her on the show. Of course, I'm going to totally blank on her name, Mindy. Great follow on Twitter. She doesn't sell on Amazon. She actually buys things from auctions, sells them on eBay and whatnot. Started with $1 books and turned that into like $7,000 worth of sales on eBay. She posted something today or yesterday, and it did not get enough reach. But she was like, you know what? You need to gas up your friends. You need to gas up your acquaintances. She's like, doesn't cost you anything, makes you feel good. So you know what? I'm gonna take a moment out of her. I'm gonna take a page out of her playbook. Shannon is an animal, and I say that in a good way. I won't say how old Shannon is, okay? But Shannon absolutely crushes. I know how her business works. I know how big of a business it is. She's seven figures in a category that a lot of people will be like, yeah, you can't do that. Ships out herself, massive shipments every week, and just keeps trucking along. Shannon, I appreciate you. Shannon, don't join yet. That's all I can say. Just hold off. All right. Let's get a little bit more news. And of course, if you guys have questions, please make sure to drop them in the chat. That's what we're here for. Amazon announced that by April 30th, they're going to be updating their date range transaction and summary reports for sellers in the US, Canada, Mexico, and Brazil. This specifically affects sellers who are subject to delivery date based reserves, which as of March 12th is essentially all of us now on that DD plus 7. So here's the problem that they say that they're solving. Up until now, if you wanted to see a complete picture of your financials for a given month, you had to pull up several reports. Your regular transaction report would show you what has been released to your balance, but anything that was still deferred under the delivery date reserve policy was in another report. So if you're trying to do like month-end reconciliation, you were stitching together these two different data sets just to see what you actually earned. For anyone using accounting software or working with a bookkeeper, this can be a bit of a headache. Well, the update, they say, is going to fix this in three different ways. First, all posted transactions are going to be in one place. Both released and deferred transactions show up in the same report. No more downloading separate deferred transaction reports and trying to match everything up manually. Second, activity is now indexed by posted date instead of release date. It's a small change, but it should be helpful. Previously, the date column reflected when the money became available to you, not when the transaction actually happened. Third, there are new columns that show you whether a transaction is deferred or released, and a separate column for the actual release date. So in one report, you're going to be able to see exactly what's been paid out and what's still being held, all organized by when the activity actually happened. If you're using any third-party accounting tools, bookkeeping services, or any custom integrations, you're going to need to make sure that your provider updates any mappings before April the 30th. I would imagine that since QuickBooks has an integration with Amazon, that will happen automatically, but I would double check that. All right. If you need to access these new reports, you go to Payments, then Reports Repository, select all unified reports under account type, choose either Summary or Transaction, and then set your start date to January 1st, 2025 or later. Reports for anything before that date are going to use the old format. Nothing groundbreaking, but Amazon does seem to be taking strides every month to try to make things more seller friendly. So this is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It's and this kind of stuff doesn't get enough play, to be honest. It takes I read that it takes five good things to counteract one bad thing, essentially, and to generalize. I think that was like relationship advice, Brene Brown type of stuff, but it translates. We love to harp on Amazon when they've slighted us, in our opinion. Yeah, it's good to see. It's pretty steady flow of Amazon doing things. We spent a long time on this show hyper analyzing the moves that Amazon was making, trying to figure out what the ulterior motive was. I remember I can hear myself saying many, many times that ultimately changes that are made are their benefit, and then they try to retrofit a reason that it's a benefit to the seller. But lately, hasn't really been the case. There's been some legitimate things that Amazon is doing to try to make things a little bit better for the sellers.
I agree. Yeah. All right. One last reminder. We do have one more piece of news and then a little something for you guys. But if you have questions, drop them in the chat. That is what we're here for, not just to bloviate. All right. So we've already talked about how retail sales are probably going to go up this year. But there is another report out that says that supply chain disruptions may be making a comeback. Now, don't start drooling quite yet, because supply chain disruptions have meant a lot of money for a lot of people in the past. But you've lived through this kind of thing before if you've been selling on Amazon for a couple of years. COVID lockdowns, one of my favorites, because like, where does this happen? The Suez Canal blockage. What a clown show that was. Port backlogs, like all kinds of stuff. And it seems like things have been getting back to normal again. And we've got a new disruption that's going to be rolling through. Of course, it is courtesy of that war in Iran. And it seems to be starting to create some pressure on global supply chains. The National Retail Federation VP of Supply Chain, Jonathan Gold, put it this way last week. He said retail supply chains have been in a constant state of disruption for the past decade, and that what was once stable and predictable has become permanent uncertainty. Not necessarily, I mean, is that what we want? No, of course we want a nice, efficient marketplace. However, inefficiencies create opportunities. So I'm kind of here for it. Now, here's what's happening on the ground. Air freight carrier DSV is reporting severe global cargo capacity shortages. Even though some services in the Gulf have partially resumed, the impact is spreading to other trade lanes as cargo gets rerouted through China, Hong Kong, from Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and Oceania. They're warning customers to expect delays, cancellations, space constraints, and short notice rate adjustments. On the logistics side, Cart.com is reporting that the disruptions are affecting both inbound and outbound trade. Brands are having trouble getting product into the U.S. to sell to consumers, and they're also struggling with international commerce. At the time that this interview was done, they had a customer's product literally stuck in transit. National Retail Federation is also forecasting that import cargo volumes in the first half of 2026 are already trending below 2025 levels, and that's before any kind of full impact of this war on supply chains is even clear. So first, if brands and manufacturers are having trouble getting product into the U.S., that means potential inventory shortages at the retail level. When stores can't restock certain products, that can, of course, change what we might have to pay at the cash register for products, and it could compress margins a little bit. But if supply chain disruptions cause certain products to become scarce on Amazon, well, that's where opportunity is created. Products that are harder to source become more valuable. Look at, I don't know, all kinds of things, but chlorine, for example, that was a very easy one. Products that are harder to source become more valuable. If you already have inventory at an FBA warehouse for a product that does become harder to find at retail, you want to make sure that your pricing is correct. So the whole name of this game is pay attention. Hang out with us. We'll let you know what we see, but also keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. If you see a Suez Canal type of problem, you have to know that that is a lever that can be pulled to probably make some money with what we do.
Yeah, see, throwing a wrench in that. Amazon's going all brand direct. What would they do with supply chain disruptions? It's the arbitrageurs there to save the day yet again. This is, I don't know. I'm almost desensitized to supply chain disruptions at this point.
Yeah. When isn't there an issue?
Yeah. Recent history. Yeah, there's always something going on. And it continues to have a near unnoticeable impact on my business. Just
speaking of supply chains, I just want to call this out because like we hang out in the arbitrage space a lot, but friend of the show, Saul, I don't know if you saw, 26 containers on a cargo ship for his direct to consumer brand in the drink.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank goodness for insurance. Is all I can say. But that can set a business back serious, when it's your brand. Because then you got to get other items and maybe you have to expedite some of it and that compresses margins and stuff like that. But man, that's rough.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. Quail House, are there any rules against Amazon associates sharing links for items they are on as sellers? So I don't know the answer to this for sure, but I would probably not do it. I would need to go and double check, and I really would want to read the rules for Amazon associates, but it's probably safest not to try to double dip. All right. Last thing, I had a lot of fun putting this one together. So we're going to start with a bit of a story. Norwegian fishermen had a serious problem. They needed to ship live sardines to market because live fish sold for a premium. However, when fishermen were coming back from their fishing outings, the sardines would go lethargic in the tanks. They'd stop swimming, and then they would lose oxygen, and then they would end up dying before they reached port. And then they would have to freeze those sardines before they go bad, and frozen sardines, they just went for a whole lot less money. However, there was this one captain, and whenever he came back, he always came back with healthy sardine fish, like every single time. And he had a secret, but the secret was never let out until after this captain died. And his secret was that he dropped a live catfish into each tank. The reason he did this is that a catfish is the natural predator to sardines. And when the sardines sensed the threat, they swam around constantly. They stayed oxygenated, they stayed alert, and they stayed alive. And so his sardines always arrived at market in perfect condition, ready to be sold for a premium price. That is the catfish effect. And I know that everyone is thinking, how are you going to turn this into something for arbitrage sellers? But if you're an OA or an RA seller who's been at this for a while, I want you to ask yourself this honestly. Like, have you ever put a catfish in your tank? Now, here's what I mean by that, all right? What happens to a lot of solo sellers is that they find their groove. And Chris, do you know what Earl Nightingale said about grooves?
No, I don't think so.
Well, a groove is a rut, and a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out. Maybe you've got 3 or 4 categories that work. Maybe you have 3 or 4 stores that work. You know them. You've got your routine. Business is fine. All right. It's paying the bills. It's comfortable, but you're not growing. Like you're just sourcing the same way and, whatever. That is a sardine sitting still in the tank. And that sardine eventually dies. Some of the best sellers I see crushing it, they're not smarter or luckier than you, but I know a lot of them have found ways to keep pressure on themselves. They've put a catfish in their own well. Some of them do it by following other sellers who are publicly posting their results. Go follow Steve French. Look at his monthly updates if you want a catfish in your well. All right. And it's not that you're going to go copy them, but like to compete with them on a level. When you see somebody in your community post a $20,000 month and you're sitting at $9,000, well, you're probably going to feel a little bit of a sting. There's your catfish. Use it. Chips on shoulders, put chips in pockets. Ask Michael Jordan. All right. Now, some sellers will do this with accountability groups. And if you're looking for the best one, ask me where to find it. Maybe you get some sellers together in a small group chat. Maybe you share some daily buys. Maybe you share some weekly profit screenshots or monthly goals. And when everyone else is hitting their numbers and you're coasting, well, that social pressure alone can keep you moving. No boss needed necessarily. Some people will do it with personal leaderboards and real consequences. Track units shipped, new ASINs tested, average ROI. And if you miss your weekly number, there's a penalty. Maybe you donate money to a charity or a politician that you disagree with, or you have to send a check to a buddy. Now, there is a balance here. Too big of a catfish, and maybe you burn out. But the goal is productive tension. Okay? Start small. Maybe pick one person to compete with. They don't have to agree to it. Like, you can just do stuff. Okay? Set a 90-day sprint with a stretch goal. Track a metric that maybe you haven't been watching before. All right. Get those sardines swimming again. All right. There is this irony about the catfish effect, is that the discomfort that you've been avoiding is exactly what keeps your business alive. Like, comfort feels safe, but in a marketplace that gets more competitive every year, comfort is the thing that eventually suffocates your growth. So find your catfish. Maybe it's a rival seller. Maybe it's a public commitment to a number you're not sure that you can hit. And whatever it is, drop it in your tank and then get to work.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. There's so many other things that I feel like pulls into that. It's at one point in time when you're talking about it, I went to the Jim Rohn quote. You're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, and then the trick to improving yourself is to cut the bottom one out and replace that person with someone better, and then you'll move up per the law of averages. I bastardized a P.T. Barnum quote yesterday before the parallel co-working session, and basically I posted a reminder that we every Saturday in the OAC Plus we're trying to get this co-working session together, where we just turn our cameras on, our mics off, and we use the Hawthorne effect to try to be more productive. And it's the Hawthorne effect says if you feel like you're being observed, your productivity goes up. It's based on an old factory experiment that was run. Fascinates me. So we're doing that every single week. So I always put a reminder in the community about an hour before, like, hey, we're getting started here in a little bit. And so I posted a quote that said, what are you spending your time on, comfort or progress? And it's basically a bastardized version of P.T. Barnum's, that comfort is the enemy of progress. Basically, I posed it. What are you spending your time on? Comfort, progress. You can only pick one. And that's essentially what those dead sardines did. They got comfortable. They got in their rut. There was no predator to keep them active. So I drew a connection there too. So yeah, that's really good. And tell me that's not a bit of the concept between the wins channel.
Mm-hmm.
People post their wins. The one cool thing, you just finished up an OA challenge. And if there are any challengers listening, specifically like new sellers, I always thought it's very, very interesting, the effect of what people do once they take their new skills and put them into practice. I remember the very first OA challenge. I joined at the time it was called the VIP group, and there were a bunch of us fresh fresh out of the OA challenge, just, enthusiastic and pumped up to put everything that we learned into play. And then you start seeing what other people are doing, and oh boy, if you saw somebody that you didn't give them quite enough credit post a number that was much larger than your last sales month, that you don't want to talk about motivation. That's the kick in the ass that'll really put things in gear. So I think that's all related to this catfish effect. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I came across that one and I was like, oh man, like this is the one. This is the one. And here's the thing, like, this all ties together. Like you can just go and do things and all that stuff. But if you read about Michael Jordan had problems with all kinds of people when he played ball. 90% of them never knew it. Like, sure, he punched Steve Kerr in the face once, but like 90% of the people who Michael Jordan had a problem with, they had no idea. But he created these enemies in his head so that he would go harder. Is it the healthiest thing? I mean, maybe, probably not. I'm sure that some psychologist is out there like, ugh, but it works. It does work. Like it keeps you trying to nip at their heels. And like Stacy, you're right. Like Steve is a pretty big catfish. And I would even argue that like it's not that you're necessarily trying to do his numbers. Steve has a very specific goal that he is working toward, which I'm all about. Like Steve's looking to retire, or be in a spot where he doesn't have to work anymore if he chooses not to. By the time he's in like his mid 40s, I have a feeling like he's going to get there. But what we can take from Steve is his consistency. And that can be the thing that we're looking to do, because I know that a lot of sellers who, maybe this is a side business, which I respect. Okay. But when it is a side business, or if we degrade it by calling it a side hustle, we can be consistently inconsistent. And that is not what this business nor any business requires. It requires some level of consistency. So yeah. Chad, that is great to hear, man. My death pile's in danger because of the latest co-work session. Dude, I've got an idea that is percolating to make the next death pile challenge even easier. So
Nice.
I'm going to build it out, and that's one of many projects I'm going to take care of, but I'm going to build this thing out so that we've got something we can just have AI go out and do some research for us, help us come up with titles and all of that stuff. I used a very rough version of this very recently to list a product, and I am quite amazed at how much more traffic this listing is getting on eBay than kind of what my median is. Normally a product I'll put up there and, I might get like, 20 views a week. Maybe I get like one watcher a week, for a good product, something, that's not so great. It'll take forever. But this one has got like 20 views in the first 3 days and like 4 or 5 watchers already. And it's just because I went out and did the research a very specific, structured way before I went up and made the listing. So
Interesting. Speaking of eBay, did I tell you I got caught up in the live auction?
You did say something about that.
It showed up. There's a
beautiful
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander rookie, PSA graded.
What's the grade on that thing?
This one's a 9.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. I didn't. I don't know. I don't know if I would ever buy a 10. Unless it was like a speculative. If I just kind of took took a flyer on a kid coming up or something like that. But defending MVP is the cat's out of the bag already with Shea. So
yeah. All right. Well, guys, if there's no more questions, we'll wrap it up there for tonight. We will be back on Wednesday at 7 p.m. to do this all again. Answer your questions, bring you a little more news, and of course, another effect or law or rule or razor to help you out in your business. All right, guys, that's it. Don't have those Sunday scaries. Let's absolutely crush the week. We'll see you on Wednesday, everybody.